Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Cutter Top 10 video. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10 worst, right? Best Wrestlemanias. We talked about the worst Wrestlemanias, WrestleMania 9 with Hogan being a big politicking, what. WrestleMania 11, when we talked about, the best part was the singing of America the Beautiful by a Special Olympian, and WrestleMania 26 when The Rock ruined Miz versus Cena, among others. But now we're going to take on the good side, the top 10 WrestleManias of all time. So number 10 is WrestleMania 35, the last WrestleMania before COVID ruined everything. So WrestleMania 35 was a pretty good show. The only problem was the wrong time. Wrong time. However, there was some great fights. Kurt Angle's last match against Baron Corbin. Kofi Kingston beating Daniel Bryan in kind of a weird reversal because Daniel Bryan was the underdog who was being pushed around and couldn't get a break. Whereas Kofi in 2019 was the one who was pushed around not getting the break. And then he beat Daniel Bryan and set up a chain of reaction in the WWE universe. And of course, with the African American wrestling community. And then came the main event, which was a triple threat for both the SmackDown and Raw Ladies Championship. That's right. The main event featured women wrestlers, not men. Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey, and Charlotte Flair were fighting. Becky Lynch, kind of the man. Ronda Rousey, known for her UFC days. And Charlotte Flair, being the daughter of Ric Flair. It was a good fight, whereas Becky Lynch beat Ronda Rousey kind of controversially because it appeared that Ronda Rousey's shoulders were up and all that. But Becky was named both the SmackDown and Raw Women's Champion. So, for a moment we had a unified WWE Women's Champion, but now we are split again. Number 9 is WrestleMania 14. This was impressive. WrestleMania 13 was good, but WrestleMania 14 was even better. The first match of WrestleMania 14 was a tag team battle royal, in which if one member of the tag team went over the rope, his partner had to leave too. It was a shocker because the 15th and final team in that event was the Legion of Doom, coming back from a hiatus, and they ended up winning. I believe, yeah, they won the battle royal, and the next pay per view they lost the tag belts, but whatever. Also, WrestleMania 14 could have also been craptacular because of the song America the Beautiful performed by the DX band, and people booed them heavily. However, WrestleMania 14 was big Ken Shamrock winning the Intercontinental belt and then losing it because he wouldn't release the ankle lock, and he got Stone Cold versus Shawn Michaels. Now, it was common knowledge in the wrestling community that Shawn Michaels was going to drop the belt because he suffered that back injury in the casket match against Undertaker at Royal Rumble. Well, Stone Cold was very popular and all that, and of course, Vince McMahon did not like that. And of course, Mike Tyson, when he was introduced as being part of the main event for WrestleMania by Vince McMahon, Stone Cold crushed it and flipped the double bird at Tyson. Tyson was allegedly working against Stone Cold Steve Austin, but then, they had that big finisher. Stone Cold stuns HBK, and then Mike Tyson makes the count and screws over Shawn Michaels and launched the Austin era and helped wrestling into mainstream pop culture. And, the added the Attitude Era was just amazing and all that. And let's not forget about Stone Cold actually sucker punching Shawn Michaels and knocking him out. Michaels would not make a WWE wrestling return for 4 years, but he would come and go as an on-screen person. All right. Number 8 is WrestleMania 12. This was a huge one because a couple years prior, Shawn Michaels had not had a WWE Championship, so he had to face Bret Hart for the belt. It was a 60-minute Iron Man match. Of course, the big concern was the fact there was like few matches on the card, including the Roddy Piper Goldust Hollywood Backlot battle. But yeah, it was amazing how Brett and Sean worked 60 minutes and nobody got a pin after it. Brett nearly made Sean tap out to the sharpshooter, but unfortunately, time ran out. Brett thought he won because obviously, as the champion, he had the champion's advantage. But Gorilla Monsoon, who was the commissioner of WWE, suggested that it would be one fall to a finish. So Bret Hart lose it to Shawn Michaels. It was amazing. The celebration and all that was just amazing. Bret Hart needed to take some time off WWE and lost it to HBK. Of course, the next year was supposed to be HBK losing it to Bret Hart, but HBK basically took his ball and went home. Number 7 is WrestleMania 31, 2015. This was big. It had high energy matches and a fresh feel. I mean, Seth Rollins actually faced Randy Orton earlier in the day, and of course, with this being at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, the sun was out shining brightly as Seth Rollins would try a curb stomp, but then Randy Orton saw it coming and gave a stunning midair RKO, which shocked a lot of people. WrestleMania 31 also had the ladder match for the Intercontinental Belt, and Daniel Bryan, again with his luck of being in the right place, right time, actually won the IC belt. Of course, months later, he had to give it up because of injury, but he was happy and all that. Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns was, of course, the main event, which was supposed to be for the WWE belt. And of course, let's not forget about Sting's match against Triple H. You know, WCW versus WWE. Sting made his in-ring debut. Of course, he was the guy who kind of ruined the authority for like 30 days. But, yeah. And then, of course, Sting brought the NWO, Hogan, Nash, and Hall with him. And Triple H countered with DX, HBK, X Pac, Hall, no, sorry, Billy Gunn, and the Road Dogg. So that was big. It was like a time machine of the 1990s, WWE versus WCW brawls. And then came Lesnar Reigns, which was kind of dull and boring, a lot of people said. And then Seth Rollins came out of freaking nowhere and cashed in his Money in the Bank contract, meaning that he could cash in for a championship spot. And it was brilliant because Seth Rollins cashed it in the middle of someone else's match, making it a triple threat. Seth Rollins won, and it was named the Heist of the Century. And so we knew. Number 6, WrestleMania 6. This was amazing and all that. The only one of the the one of only 2 WrestleManias to be held outside of the United States. Of course, there's rumors that Saudi Arabia is going to get one in 2027. But anyway, the 2002 WrestleMania 18 should be on here too because it was good, but there were some match pacing problems. I mean, come on, you got Hogan versus The Rock, so it's greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, obviously. But we're talking about WrestleManias. So yeah, WrestleMania 6 in 1990 in Toronto at the Sky Dome, which had been christened just the previous year. Lots of fans came by. Jesse the Body Ventura giving Toronto props and all that with the stadium and all that, and Robert Goulet singing "Oh Canada." This was amazing. There were like what 12 to 16 matches on that card. Of course, the Hart Foundation beat the Bolsheviks, the Russian tank guys, in like 20 seconds. Of course, it was a sneak attack. Roddy Piper's match against Bad News Brown ending in no contest. Piper, unfortunately, his match is scrubbed off Peacock because of the fact that Roddy painted half his body black and half his body white. It was funny and all that, but it was wrong. Uh, Dusty Rhodes teaming up with Sapphire to face Macho Man and Queen Sherry because he was the Macho King at one time, and of course separated from Elizabeth in the wrestling sense. What else? I feel like Earthquake won his match in Canada, which was great because John Tanta Canadian. I feel like Dino Bravo and Rick Martel were in it too because they were Canadian. But yeah, the main event was huge. It was Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. And it actually inspired a couple of future WWE superstars, as in Edge and Christian. So yeah, the Warrior was the IC champion and Hulk Hogan was the WWE champion. So they had title for title, belt for belt, if you will. It was going to be huge. And even more huge was that the main event was going to have two faces, aka good guys, face each other. Basically, who hates the Warrior? Who hates Hulk Hogan at the time in 1990? This was just amazing. They put on a power display. Hulk Hogan missed with a leg drop. Warrior splashed Hogan and beat him cleanly. Electrified fans across Canada and beyond. And, it was huge. Of course, we can't forget that WrestleMania 7 was going to be the next year. They had those big promos for the LA Memorial Coliseum and probably 100,000 fans watching WrestleMania, breaking the Pontiac Silverdome's record. Unfortunately, though, poor ticket sales and the Gulf War made it go to the LA Sports Arena. Canada can hold its own. 8. Number 5, WrestleMania 20. Yeah, I know it should be lower because of the fact that, you know, the whole shebang with the two champions and all that. And all that. But we'll get to that later. WrestleMania 20 was huge because, they had that big promo coming back to where it all began, New York City, Madison Square Garden, where WrestleMania 1 and 10 were held. WrestleMania 10 wasn't that half bad. Of course, there was a lot of problems with the belt situation, but anyway, never mind. WrestleMania 20 was huge. The opening match was John Cena versus Big Show for the U.S. belt, and John Cena, with the aid of a chain, managed to FU, or attitude adjustment, as you call it, the Big Show, and win his first WWE Championship. First WWE title. He won the U.S. belt. There were a couple of rough spots, including Ultimo Dragon's massive slip in the Cruiserweight Championship. But yeah, it was amazing and all that. Of course, Eddie Guerrero would face Kurt Angle. Was it Kurt Angle for the WWE belt? I think it was. But yeah, Eddie outsmarted Kurt Angle. Angle had the ankle lock, like submission hold, and Eddie had loosened his boot. So all Angle would have was boot. And then Eddie managed to frog splash Angle to win the belt. The Undertaker was back after being buried alive, well, of course, in kayfabe, in 2003, and then he came back in his dead man persona because the Undertaker before that was a biker, but now he was the dead man again. He faced Kane. It was amazing to see the Undertaker back, and the chills of that return. And of course, we can't forget about the triple threat main event between HBK, Triple H, and Chris Benoit. He's partially redacted. I think people still are talking about him more. But anyway, yeah, Chris Benoit. Or that guy, if you can say that. But anyway, it was a great triple threat. Benoit forced Triple H to tap after a submission hold, the crippler crossface. It was amazing. And what's even more amazing was when Chris Benoit finally won a WWE belt after so many years in the industry. Eddie Guerrero was there with his WWE Championship, and basically they had an emotional hug. It was one of the most emotional moments in WWE history. Unfortunately, though, 3 years later, it would take a toll because Eddie had died in November 2005 from a heart attack, and Chris Benoit was seemingly going down a steep hill because of his mental health with Eddie's death and what he did to his wife and child. Mm. Number 4, WrestleMania 30. It's always big. It's like every 10 WrestleManias, they're pretty impressive. WrestleMania 40 was also impressive. It wasn't like top 10 characterization, but you know what? It was big because Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Was that the? Was that when they won the tag belts? Yeah, that was when they won the tag belts. No, sorry, that was the year before. Shit. But anyway, yeah, the big Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns match, which finally ended Roman's 4-year run as WWE champion. And of course, we can't forget the whole ending with Michael Cole saying, "Finish the story." And he did. Anyway, WrestleMania 30 was big in 2014. Daniel Bryan was WWE champion a couple times, but then the authority, as in Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, bitch, would compete and try to ruin Daniel Bryan's aspirations because he's a B-plus player. However, Daniel Bryan decided to overtake Raw with lots of fans in the Yes shirts and all that. And Triple H finally balked after Daniel Bryan was not even uh, in the Royal Rumble and all that. Everyone got pissed off. Of course, they booed the hell out of Batista for winning the WWE belt. So anyhow, Daniel Bryan did his job. He would face Triple H in a match. If Daniel Bryan did win the match, it would be him alongside Batista and Randy Orton for the main event. Triple H tried everything in his power, but Daniel Bryan powered out of it, beat him, but then Triple H beat him up to try to ruin it for Daniel Bryan to win the WWE belt afterwards. Of course, WrestleMania 30 is always going to be known for the start, like Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, and Shawn Michaels, and that nice opening act and all that. Of course, Hulk Hogan would make himself a fool by calling the Superdome the Silver Dome. But anyway, there was still some just I think was this Cesaro winning the I think this was when Cesaro won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal and by putting Big Show over the ropes. Um, this was also a big thing because Undertaker would face off against Brock Lesnar with his streak on the line because the Undertaker had never lost to WrestleMania. He was 21-0. Unfortunately, though, Undertaker suffered a concussion. They had to change the pace of the match, and Brock Lesnar, after 5 F5s, pinned him. And of course, we can't forget about that wide eye stance by the Yes guy at ringside. However, the Yes movement moved forward. Daniel Bryan versus Batista versus Randy Orton in the main event. Somehow, in some way, Daniel pulled it off and forced Batista to tap out. And Michael Cole says, "The Miracle Kid, the Miracle Kid, the Miracle Kid." You can also hear, you think that, is it the miracle came? The miracle came. I wish it was that. Of course, this was also when Daniel Bryan celebrated his title with one kid nicknamed Connor the Crusher because he was having cancer at age 9 years old and all that. And WWE did a massive tribute to the guy because he actually pinned Triple H one time. Anyway, number 3, WrestleMania 19, 2003. This was a stacked card in Seattle, home of my buddy Jason Lundgren. But yeah, this was a massive thing. John Cena trying to do a WrestleMania rap thing, but having technical difficulties. Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho, as Jericho idolized Shawn Michaels' techniques and all that. Jericho wanted to face Shawn Michaels and basically beat him up. HBK beat Jericho, but Jericho became a dickwad to HBK. You had, of course, the Andre pillow fight, which wasn't too good. The Rock would face Stone Cold in the third and final showdown at WrestleMania. I know they fought each other many times in non-WrestleMania matches, but yeah, Rock versus Stone Cold. WrestleMania 17 and I think 16, right? I think it was like 15, no, 15 and 17 they met for the title. This time there was no title on the line. Triple H would defend the heavyweight belt against Booker T, and of course Triple H would be mocked for his nose job and basically WWE being racist with his promos towards Booker T. Nevertheless, The Rock would take on Stone Cold for the third and final time. The Rock finally being Stone Cold at WrestleMania. The next night, he left the WWE for Hollywood, but not before Goldberg speared him. And then, of course, you have the main event: Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle for the WWE belt. Brock Lesnar doing something unusual for a man his size and his skill quality. He actually went up to the top of the rope and tried to do a shooting star press, but botched it and nearly knocked himself out. Kurt Angle had to improvise the match because Brock was going to beat Kurt Angle for the belt. I mean, Brock should not have been able to win that match because of his botch. All that. Well, they told him to do a top rope move. This would be the catalyst for Brock leaving the company in 2004, among other things. Number 2, WrestleMania 3, 1987. This was huge. WrestleMania 1 was pretty good in its own standards, and it almost bankrupted the McMahons. WrestleMania 2 really ruined it with 3 locations, but they finally got it right. WrestleMania 3 in front of the Silver Dome in a dome stadium, over 70,000 fans. Although WWE wanted 90,000 fans. WrestleMania 3 was big and all that. You had Roddy Piper facing Adrian Adonis in what they called his retirement match, as in Roddy's retirement match, but we all know that was bullshit. There was even a match with, I know this is not technically right, but I'm going to say it, midget wrestlers and all that. You know, Sky Lolo, Little Beaver was in this one, the Haiti Kid, and I can't remember the other. Little Tokyo, I think it was the other wrestler. And then, of course, there was King Kong Bundy versus Hillbilly Jim. Um, There were other matches. Billy Jack Hayes versus Hercules in a full Nelson challenge. Um, yeah. Jake the Snake Roberts in his match. I can't remember who it was against, but he had Alice Cooper in his corner. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3, which was the main event, which was the blow off from a massive storyline in which Hulk was WWE champion since '84. And Andre the Giant basically said he didn't want to win the title. He just wanted to be Andre the Giant. Unfortunately, though, things would change as Andre became a little jealous of Hulk's thing, especially Hulk getting a bigger trophy than him. So he enlists Bobby the Brain Heenan and comes out on Piper's Pit and challenges Hulk for the belt and rips Hulk Hogan's stuff apart. Hulk couldn't believe he had to fight Andre the Giant. Of course, Andre the Giant was getting closer and closer to death with his back problems and his gigantism. So Hulk didn't know anything. Andre almost won the match in the first minute as Hulk tried to slam Andre but failed. And then Andre apparently pinned him for 3, but it was like 2.5. But anyway, Hulk would summon the courage to beat Andre the Giant and then to lift him. Of course, Andre the Giant legitimately said, lift me, boss. And Hulk did it. Hulk beat Andre the Giant and won the belt. But that's not really the belt in WrestleMania 3 that they're talking about. No, no. For how good Andre versus Hulk was, it wasn't the best match of the night. No, that was the Intercontinental Belt match between Macho Man Randy Savage and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Many people said it was a technical masterpiece. It was big. George the Animal Steel was also there too with Miss Elizabeth. And Macho Man submitted himself as good. He did unfortunately go to the well one too many times with the top rope drop, and then couldn't beat Ricky Steamboat. But then Savage tried to beat up on Steamboat, but then Steamboat put the small package on him and won the match. It was classic. And finally, number 1 is WrestleMania X7. Lots of people say this was the greatest WrestleMania ever. And who am I to disagree? This was actually pretty impressive. This kind of was the accumulation of the Attitude Era. It set the standard for wrestling supercards. Held in Houston's Astrodome, should have been Reliance Stadium, but it didn't. Yeah, it was huge and all that. Over 70,000 fans got to see a lot of things happen. They got to see some great tag belts, including TLC 2, which saw Edge and Christian versus the Dudley Boys versus the Hardy Boys for the tag belts. And Edge from a 20-foot ladder spearing Jeff Hardy. It was just amazing. See that. Unfortunately, though, Edge rocked his neck from that move, and that kind of led to his retirement years later. But nevertheless, TLC 2 was just amazing. I mean, there were some great matches. I mean, yeah, the Gimmick Battle Royal wasn't half bad. I mean, it was decent. Howard Finkel as the announcer. Mean Gene Okerlund and Bobby the Brain Heenan were coming back to the WWE from WCW. So, yeah, we'll talk about WCW in a sec. But the fact is that, they were there. You had Kamala, you had The Goon, you had Jim Cornette, you had Brother Love, you had Sergeant Slaughter, Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, Duke the Dumpster Drozy, and other legends. Oh, the Hillbilly Jim. The Godly Googer was also in that match. Of course, it was a fast paced match because you couldn't make a move, but Iron Sheik won the match, and then Sergeant Slaughter gave him a clutch, which was cool. Of course, this was in the shadow of WCW having to go under because of Turner Broadcasting being bought up by AOL. It was AOL, now Time Warner, and AOL didn't think that wrestling was worth their time. So basically, they had to cut WCW loose. Vince McMahon had personally thought he bought WCW and owned it. Unfortunately, though, Shane McMahon bought it under his nose in the last WCW thing, which was just a few weeks before this WrestleMania, and that fuel to the fire, it was going to be Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon in a street fight, refereed by Mick Foley. And Shane was being cheered on, even though that, he was WCW owner, Vince was WWE owner. And of course, the storyline about Vince cheating on Linda with Trish Stratus came to his head as Vince would be shattered in the nuts by a Linda kick. And Shane won the match, coast to coast with the trash can. But nothing beats the main event, and that was Stone Cold versus The Rock, which was massive because, Stone Cold getting the push in Texas and The Rock being, the fucking Rock. What do you expect? So anyway, The Rock aside, it was just too much to handle for a lot of fans. But yeah, Stone Cold versus The Rock. Vince came out magically appearing after his match against Shane, and then gave Stone Cold a chair. And for some strange reason, Stone Cold decided to take the chair and hurt Rock and win the belt that way. And it was just shocking to see Stone Cold and Vince McMahon shaking hands and all that. It was going to be a massive heel turn, but the fans did not buy it. And basically, they wanted Stone Cold to turn good again. And Stone Cold did say he regretted shaking Vince McMahon's hand because, Vince McMahon was the devil. And Stone Cold was supposed to be the anti hero. But a lot of things happen for a reason. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.